Rachel Maddow Show, weeknights at 9 Eastern on MSNBC.
This is an exciting time, right? This is a very exciting time to be in the news biz or to care about politics, and there's a big show ahead here. It was a year ago this week that Mitt Romney at the Iowa State Fair sort of broke down under the pressure of some really persistent heckling and said something on tape that will probably haunt his campaign until the very end, as if it were a poltergeist.
We have to make sure that the promises we make in Social Security, Medicaid, and Medicare are promises we can keep. And there are various ways of doing that. One is we could raise taxes on people. That's not the way. Corporations are people, my friend. We can raise taxes on. Of course they are. Everything corporations earn ultimately goes to people. So, where do you think it goes? Whose pockets? Whose pockets? People's pockets. Okay, human beings, my friend.
Human beings, my friend. For the 1-year anniversary of the corporations are people moment at last year's Iowa State Fair, this year the Romney campaign decided to send their brand new vice presidential pick not just to the Iowa State Fair, but to that exact same stage, that exact same microphone to face, it turned out, pretty much the exact same kind of persistent heckling. And while Paul Ryan did not get flustered enough that he blurted out, "Corporations are people," still, it didn't go well today.
You know, I heard that President Obama is starting his bus tour today. And I heard he wasn't going to come to the Iowa State Fair. I think it's become so. You know what? It's funny. It's funny because Iowans and Wisconsinites, we like to be respectful of one another and peaceful with one another and listen to each other. These ladies must not be from Iowa or Wisconsin. Hey, like I said, she must not be from Iowa. So, hey, all right.
Hey, all right. So this is the big rollout of the new Mitt Romney, Paul Ryan Republican ticket. They sent Paul Ryan for his first solo event to have a very difficult time being heckled at the Iowa State Fair. After doing the big rollout, a big announcement of Mr. Ryan on Saturday morning, and then doing a couple of joint events with both Mr. Romney and Mr. Ryan over the weekend, they then right away put Paul Ryan out on his own. And you can tell that he's new at this. I mean, understandably uncomfortable with people shouting stuff at him and with the dynamics of a crowd like that. Paul Ryan is not used to this. Paul Ryan is used to traveling in Republican circles where he is treated more like this.
Congressman, we want to thank you so much for coming in today. We also want to note that it's your birthday.
That's right.
And your 42nd birthday, and we have a...
You got to be kidding me. Oh, my God. Where did you get this?
Well, we actually...
All right.
I was up all night making it.
Yeah, you were.
You want to cut into that, sucker?
I don't eat sweets.
No, but it's the federal dollar. Don't you want...
Yeah, I see that.
Get it? Paul Ryan's the guy who wants to cut up the federal dollar. Paul Ryan is not much used to people thinking that he is anything other than awesome. Even when his party was at the lowest point possible, right after the 2008 presidential election, when the Republicans just got shellacked, Paul Ryan was still treated as a king in Republican circles. It was 4 days after the 2008 election, when the Democrats won the House and the Senate and the White House by a huge margin. 4 days after that, the Wall Street Journal editorial board pushed for Paul Ryan to become the Republican leader in the House. Fast forward 2.5 years, and the love affair is still hot, hot, hot. The Conservative Weekly Standard pushing last year for Paul Ryan to not just be the leader of the House Republicans, but to run for president. After it was clear, despite all the pushing from the conservative media, that he was not going to run for president, there has still been a loud drumbeat in the conservative media all year long that he should at least be the Republican vice presidential pick. And this is once again where it becomes important to us as a country to understand that we have a totally bifurcated media universe now. It's not always been this way, but the fact that it is this way now is important. If you are a politically engaged right-winger, if you are a conservative, if you are a Republican, The conservative media love affair with Paul Ryan is probably all you have ever heard about Paul Ryan. In the hermetically sealed, self-confirming, don't touch that dial world of right-wing talk radio and the conservative blogosphere and the conservative magazines and, of course, the Fox News channel, there really is nothing controversial about Paul Ryan at all. He is perfect in every way. But now the process of leaving that bubble, the trip from Republicanville into the rest of usville, into Normalville, for lack of a better term, that trip is proving to be a little bit jarring, which we saw in Paul Ryan firsthand today at his first event. That wasn't just a Republican campaign pep rally with people cheering for him lustily. We saw that even more dramatically as the other half of the Republican ticket, Mr. Romney himself, embarked on his first big trip after the Ryan announcement to Florida. Today, the website BuzzFeed posted snapshots of the front pages of major Florida newspapers so we could see the local Florida reporting on Mr. Romney heading down to Florida to campaign right after picking Paul Ryan as his running mate. Look at these headlines. The Miami Herald, Ryan could hurt Romney in Florida. The Indian River Press Journal, Ryan may be liability in Florida. Romney's pick for running mate could antagonize many seniors. The Palm Beach Post, with Ryan in, Medicare key. Florida seniors weren't fans of bold policy that intruded on health care. The Ledger newspaper of Lakeland, Florida, Romney seeks distance from Ryan's plans. The Bradenton Herald, Ryan could be drag in Florida. Medicare plans may hinder Romney. See, in Republicanville, Paul Ryan may be some combination of a reincarnated Ronald Reagan and a rock star. But in Normalville, outside of that bubble, he's the kill Medicare guy. And again, I think this may be a shock to them. I mean, Republicans have their own echo chamber. And if you listen to conservatives just echoing each other, just talking to each other about Paul Ryan, you would think that selecting him was not only non-controversial, you would think that it was being greeted with universal acclaim. It is not. USA Today had the first polling today since Paul Ryan was tapped to be Mitt Romney's running mate. And it is not pretty for the Republicans. Quote, Ryan is seen as only a fair or poor choice by 42% of Americans versus 39% who think he is an excellent or pretty good vice presidential choice. USA Today Gallup polls of registered voters after the announcement of running mates since Dick Cheney in 2000 all showed more positive reactions. But wait, there's more. The USA Today Gallup survey today also finds 48% of Americans view Paul Ryan as qualified to be president if something should happen to Mitt Romney. Only Sarah Palin and Dan Quayle were rated lower than Paul Ryan on that scale. Numbers this bad for Paul Ryan, again, must not only be disappointing to Republicans, but shocking to conservatives who, in their world, have really never heard anything negative about him at all. They didn't even know he was controversial. But in the real world, Paul Ryan comes from the most unpopular Congress in the history of polling on the popularity of Congress. I mean, Congress is never all that popular, but it has never been more unpopular than it is right now. And Paul Ryan is arguably the most famous face of the current Congress because he is the Republican budget guy. And the Republican budget guy is really, really famous because the Republican budget would kill Medicare. And that's really unpopular. When Paul Ryan rolled out the last iteration of the Kill Medicare budget, CNN polled on it. Here's what they found. Quote, a majority of all demographic groups do not favor the GOP, aka Paul Ryan Medicare proposals. It wasn't just unpopular, it was unpopular with everybody. The percentage of all Americans who opposed the Kill Medicare plan was 58%. Among people who described themselves as conservative, 54% disapprove of Paul Ryan's plans on Medicare. 54% of conservatives. CNN asked just older people. Look at the number with older people. 74% said they disapproved of Paul Ryan and the Kill Medicare plan. The demographic with which Barack Obama did the worst in 2008 was people over 60. That's going to get better this year. Thank you, Paul Ryan. That is why Democrats were so hoping that Mitt Romney would pick this guy. For Democrats looking at the poll numbers for what Paul Ryan is most famous for what he represents in our political system, Mitt Romney picking him is, I mean, it's not Christmas in August. It's like Christmas birthday Kwanzaa in August. I mean, Democrats are very happy. Back in March, when things looked much worse for Mr. Obama's reelection prospects than they look right now, the Obama team had stretched even back then to try to link Mitt Romney to Paul Ryan. How can we link this guy to this completely politically toxic other guy? White House senior advisor David Plouffe went on the Sunday shows one weekend in March and tried to have the phrase Romney-Ryan plan take off. He kept saying that phrase, Romney-Ryan. The Obama campaign hoping to link Mitt Romney with something as toxic as the political legacy of Paul Ryan. And now that dream has come true. The unpopularity of Paul Ryan, the political toxicity of him in a general election, is not just a theoretical thing that you have to project forward to from the polls to imagine what it might be like. This is something that we've already seen in the real world. As soon as Paul Ryan's economic plans, as soon as the kill Medicare budget became official Republican policy, as soon as they started making Republican members vote on it, Democrats started spinning that into electoral gold. In the first special election after House Republicans voted in favor of the Paul Ryan plan, Democrats used that fact to capture a House seat in Western New York that had pretty consistently been held by Republicans since before the Civil War. Democrat Kathy Hochul won that seat by tying her Republican opponent to the Republican kill Medicare budget. And since that election, it's only gotten worse for the Republicans on this issue, not better. That Democrat, Kathy Hochul, was out this weekend with a new fundraising pitch tied directly to Paul Ryan being picked as the VP. Her Republican opponent this fall, a man named Chris Collins, is running from the Ryan plan now as fast as he can. Quote, Chris Collins does not support the Ryan cuts to Medicare, said Chris Grant, an advisor to the campaign. That may be true about Chris Collins, and if it is true, he is not alone. Nevada's Dean Heller. When Dean Heller was in the House, he voted for the Paul Ryan plan. Then Dean Heller got appointed to the Senate, poor guy, just in time to be expected to vote for the Paul Ryan plan again, which he did. But now that Dean Heller is running for re-election in the Senate, he is running away from the Paul Ryan plan as fast as he can. Republican Senator Scott Brown is trying to get reelected in Massachusetts. Tough territory for him. Look at this op-ed that he wrote back in May. Why I don't back Paul Ryan's Medicare plan. Thank you, Republican Senator Scott Brown. The Massachusetts Democratic Party is already out today with an attack ad against Scott Brown, nevertheless linking him to Paul Ryan. The Republican Party in Montana is running an ad in their state touting the fact that their Republican Senate nominee voted against the Paul Ryan plan because they said Paul Ryan's plan, quote, could harm the Medicare program so many of Montana's seniors rely on. That's the Republican Party of Montana running that ad. These are Republicans running against Paul Ryan, bragging that they didn't vote for this toxic Paul Ryan kill Medicare thing. Heather Wilson, the Republican nominee for Senate in New Mexico, was careful to tell her hometown newspaper there, quote, I didn't agree with everything in the Ryan plan. I was concerned about some of his approaches to Medicare. Even slightly wacky Linda McMahon, who was trying to run for the Senate as a Republican in Connecticut, even she is running away from the Paul Ryan plan, saying she would never support, never support a budget like that. My friend Steve Benin, who writes at maddowblog.com, Steve has always had a very, I think, useful framing for thinking about how candidates pick vice presidential nominees. The vice presidential picks are either Augusts or Novembers or Januaries. The strongest possible candidate will pick a January. They'll pick somebody who will help them govern once they get elected. Sort of middle-of-the-road candidate will pick somebody with an eye toward November. They'll pick a November. Somebody will help them get elected in the general election in November. Somebody would help them appeal to a broad swath of the nation. And then there's the type of vice president that the weakest candidate chooses, an August. The person who won't necessarily help you govern starting in January, won't necessarily help you win in November, but who does speak to your own party's base. It's the kind of choice you make to make your own party like you, to make your own side think you are one of them. Paul Ryan is the paragon of Mr. August. I was hoping for Liz Cheney. Paul Ryan is better. This is not the guy you pick to win Florida. This is the guy you pick to win Fox and Friends.